Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High. When I was young, I was invincible. I find myself not thinking twice. I never thought about no future. It's just a roll of the dice. But the day may come when you've got something to lose. And just when you think you're done paying dues, you say to yourself, dear God, what have I done? And hope it's not too late, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Yesterday is history, and tomorrow's a mystery. But baby, right now, it's just about you and me. You can run, you can hide, just like Bonnie and Clyde. Reach for the sky, ain't never gonna die. And I thank the Lord for the love that I have found. And hold you tight, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. So if you please take this moment, try if you can to make it last. Don't think about no future, and just forget about the past and make it last. Reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come. Reach for the sky, reach for the sky, cause tomorrow may never come.
There's a house somewhere I know where the fires burn all night long. There's a swing outside on the porch where I feel I could rock away the dust till the dawn. And even though the wind may now be howling, the stars are bright and they push me on and on. There's a half moon rising in southeastern skies. There's a cold wind blowing across the great divide. And the stars, they guide my way across the night. There's a half moon rising, pushing me on over another mountaintop. Push me on, no, I'll never stop. Push me on. There's a half moon rising rising in southeastern skies tonight. Now the shoes on my feet, the soles are broken down, and my coat is tattered and worn. And the hunger in my belly and the fever in my head will vanish at my first glimpse of home. And even though the rain may now be falling, passion is deep, it pushes me on. There's a half moon rising in southeastern skies. There's a cold wind blowing across the great divide, and the stars they guide my way across the night. There's a half moon rising, pushing me on over another mountaintop. Push me on, no, I'll never stop. Push me on. There's a half moon rising in southeastern skies tonight. There's a still at dawn, like the sound of your love's breath, as she lies sleeping. Down below me now in the valley is the only peace on earth that I ever want to know. And your lips are as soft as I remember. She alone has brought me back on home. There's a half moon rising in southeastern skies. There's a cold wind blowing across the great divide, and the stars they guide my way across the night. There's a half moon rising, pushing me on over another mountaintop. Push me on, no, I'll never stop. Push me on. There's a half moon rising in southeastern skies tonight.
That vodka just jumps right off.
It does. Welcome, everyone, all of you, each one of you, to the celebration of life for Joe Somogyi. Your presence honors Joe, whose life we're here to remember and celebrate. Welcome to Joe's father, Joe, from Racine, Wisconsin, and to his brother Aaron, kid brother Aaron, and to Joe's many loving relatives and friends in other states who are here in spirit and probably watching online as this is being streamed. I'd especially like to acknowledge Joe and Aaron's beloved mom, Linda, who passed away earlier this year. She's very much here with us. But I wonder if Joe might be surprised by all of this attention. By all accounts, he was reluctant to draw attention to himself, but instead preferred to kind of stay in the background and help other people with their needs. I didn't know Joe, but I wish I had, because I would have felt very comfortable around him. As I listened to his dad and brother a couple of days ago, and his friend Garrett, I saw a picture of Joe as kind and helpful and patient, present to others, and quietly insightful. I heard that he could see the heart of a situation and give a wise and witty one-liner that kind of summed everything up. But Joe's friends can say all this much better than I can, and they will today. First, though, I'd like to offer some thoughts about Joe and the shock of his passing. This is a time of great loss and grief that's to be acknowledged and allowed. Please be tender and kind to yourselves as you grieve, and be refuge for each other in this time. Anne Lamott wrote something beautiful about grief. She said, "You will lose someone you can't live without, and your heart will be badly broken. And the bad news is that you never completely get over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up. And you come through. It's like having a broken leg that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold, but you learn to dance with the limp. Well, maybe that limp is a holy thing and something to be treasured. Maybe you all can honor that limp as a place of remembering the gifts that your dear one shared with you. Will you all pray with me? Oh God, you have said in an ancient psalm, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. God, we ask you to make this comfort real today, to be with Joe's family and friends who are blessed with the gift of his unique humanness and spirit. Even as we grieve, may we celebrate that big spirit. And please give us eyes and hearts to see and celebrate Joe today. Amen. So now we'll remember Joe through your eyes. I believe we'll start with Garrett Dickinson, who said Joe was always a voice of reason and joked that Joe must have talked us out of a few dozen felonies. This was back in the day, of course, and Garrett, sorry if I stole your punchline there. Good. So Garrett will speak, and then it would be lovely if any of you would be willing to share something about Joe, but we'll get to that in a bit. Garrett?
Hey everyone, it's nice to see so many faces and from so long ago as well, even if we're here for sad reasons. I think it's also a testament to Joe himself that so many people are here and gathering to remember him. So you'll have to bear with me if I stumble through this a little bit. It's a little tough. I knew Joe fairly well. I'm pretty sure, I was racking my brain, but I'm pretty sure the first time I met him was either on a quick trip to Durango or when we all went to France. And we went to France, I was 21, so that was a while ago. And I remember thinking how cool it was that Joe wanted to hang out with all of us in the forest while we climbed. And we were going to a real special place, the Forest of Fontainebleau. And for me, it was kind of like my first real big adult adventure. And Joe was there for that. And that's a sentiment that I'm going to circle back to a few times because that's one of the things I think about him the most is that he was there so often and for so many of us at so many different times. And, you know, Joe didn't really ask for a lot. He was just supportive and he listened. But sometimes I think being quiet, maybe people didn't think he was as present as he really was because he was right there. And multiple times in my life, not just funny one-liners, but I would be sharing something difficult with Joe, and selfishly, whatever, wondering if he was listening. And then when I would finish talking, he would say something just perfect, and he'd get it done in like a sentence or two. You're about to find out what a blabbermouth I am. I really just let my motor mouth will get going and be hard to stop. But you know, um, Joe and I. So in the time that we've known each other, I'm 39 now, so you can do your own math. I don't do it very often in my head, but met him at 21. Uh, we lived together for a while, first in one house, and then we actually got a house together on 5th and 5th. And that's where I remember spending a lot of time with a lot of the people that I feel fortunate enough to be looking around the room today and seeing. And that was a real special time in my life. And I think it was for a lot of us because we had a really tight crew. We hung out together, we worked together, we lived together. I mean, just we were together all the time. And Joe was my roommate. And that was 2 years of my life, which is a long time. And we went on a lot of adventures and had a lot of good times. But something I really want to mention when it comes to Joe being there is when I got a call from my dad really early in the morning, getting ready for work, like 5:30 in the morning. And for those who know, me and my dad have an interesting relationship, and he's kind of, I say lovingly, definitely hell on wheels. And he was at a low point in his life and asking if I could help him get back on his feet. And it was kind of an emergent situation. And so, I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I would make different decisions now with more adult boundaries. But I decided to see if it would be okay with Joe if my dad stayed with us. And that was kind of a lot to ask because my dad was in a low point in his life. All respect to him, but a lot of it was due to his decisions, which obviously is asking an awful lot of your roommate to bring into their personal daily lives. And so I asked Joe at like 5:45 in the morning or whatever it was, hey, whatever you think is okay, but if my dad stayed with us until he's back on his feet, would that be okay? And I could tell that Joe took in the gravity of the situation because he looked at me for a few seconds. He looked down at the ground for like a minute or two of silence. And then he looked back up at me and he said, yeah, that's okay. And we ended up having some pretty good times with my dad. And he sends his love from California because Joe meant a lot to him. He's doing better now, and that time where we were able to provide support for him was really important. And it didn't go smooth every single day that my dad was with us. It was a whole summer, actually, which was longer than I anticipated. But Joe never made me feel awkward or bad about it once, or my dad. He was accepting of both of us and the interesting nature of the situation. And I think that speaks volumes to his generosity, at least through my own experience getting to know Joe and walk through some of this life with him. And it was really nice to be able to walk through this life with him because we were into a lot of the same things. I remember one of the things I connected with Aaron right away when we first met, which was about a year or so before I met Joe, was music, especially punk rock. And we used to listen to a lot of punk rock, and still do, especially this last couple weeks. And there's not a whole lot of people who have been to more of the great shows that I've been to than Joe. He was always there at the shows with us. I saw some of the best concerts of my life, and for those of us who love music, we know that that is some of the best times of our life. And I got to share that with Joe, whether that was here in town, traveling long distances. We saw Social Distortion and Tiger Army and the Super Suckers at Red Rocks one time because they were playing during a family reunion, and I was going to be up there. And Joe came to the family reunion and hung out and like met my family, and that was really cool. I thought that he was just so willing to meet new people and accepting if the situation was there and it felt good to him, and he just fit in everywhere because he was a kind person. I think a lot of us know that he's a part of our lives just because of his presence, even without him saying a really good one-liner. And then, life changes and sometimes we grow more apart than we used to be. And over the years, Joe and I didn't hang out as much. We didn't live together and that kind of thing. And it'd been quite a while since I'd heard from him, and I don't remember, I want to say maybe 3 years ago or so. And I believe it was Joe specifically called me out of the blue to see if I wanted some extra work, to go spend some days with him at Four Escapes and Aaron. And I remember, excuse me just one sec. I remember feeling really good that Joe trusted me enough to offer me to be a part of his work crew, because Joe always had a really good work ethic. He was on time. He worked till the end of the day. He didn't slack off. He protected his boundaries and took his breaks appropriately, which is something that I've struggled to do, especially in construction work. And I felt really good that, not only was he considerate of asking me, because at that time in my life I was between a bunch of jobs and stringing stuff together, and sometimes doing work I really didn't want to do, and it was a joy to hang out with the two of them outside doing hard work and good work. And I always felt that Joe was so trustworthy and solid that I was almost surprised that he would reach out to me and trust me with bringing me into his work crew. And fortunately, because of that reconnection, I think we spent more time together over the last couple of years than we would have otherwise. And the last time I saw Joe was this spring. We went out for a dinner for his birthday. We were watching some hockey, which was, always a good time and had been a common thread in our lives as well. And looking back on it, I remember thinking, oh, I'm stoked to be out for a friend's birthday again. I had isolated myself for some years from most everybody. And it was really nice to be there, to hang out with folks. I saw Kenny. I don't even know how long it had been since I'd seen you. Jeremy, had been quite a while since I'd seen you. And Joe and Aaron, of course. And looking back, of course, we can't ever know these things, but looking back, I wish I would have done something, really excuse me, something that you would expect from me, really obnoxious thing, like picking you up with a bear hug or some dumb thing. And I was a little bit more mellow and reserved, but it was because I had taken for granted that at all those times in France, and when my dad needed a place, and at these concerts, and even when I needed to be catching a little extra work or whatever, Joe was always there. And I think I took that a little bit for granted, I think, as sometimes we do with the people we love. And so looking back with that hindsight now, I wish I would have given him a big old bear hug. And, something like I said, characteristically annoying for me. But I do know that although it's different, Joe is still here with me, and I hope that he can be there with all of you in a similar way. And the way that he's still here with me, beyond in spirit or whatever your faith may be, is that there will be times when I'm going to come to decisions I need to make or events in my life, or I'm going to get a call from a friend or a family member who needs a few minutes or an evening of my time, and I'm going to feel too busy or too stressed out to do it. And I'll remember Joe, and I'll be like, that isn't what Joe would do. He would make the time and he would be there. And I think that's a sentiment a lot of us feel about him. And so when those moments come up, I can remember that in his own way and in my own way, he'll be standing there right next to me, helping me make a good decision. The voice of reason, again, I don't try and get into committing any felonies these days, but he can still guide me to hang out with my friends and family more than maybe I would when I'm feeling overwhelmed with life. And so just in conclusion, I just thought I'd say, in keeping with some tradition and stuff, that I would read something from the Bible. And obviously we all have our own face, but these words for some reason just really jumped out at me. So I'm just taking the meaning of them to heart. And it's 2 Timothy 4:7. And it is, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. And that's how I think of Joe. And that faith for me is, again, making time for the people we love, living a life of integrity, being solid and consistent. All the things that I cherish so much about my memories of him and the fact that he was a part of my life. So I just would, in those moments when maybe things are a little dark or a little lost, we can just remember that, for me at least, Joe will still be there as long as I let him be there, as long as I hold him in my memory and I act in accordance with the integrity that I always saw him present. And so, interestingly enough, that's what I would like to say. I'm going to read something from a good friend of many of ours, Sam Redmond, who unfortunately was not able to be here today. But he wanted me to pass on some thoughts about Joe. And excuse me, I got to grab my phone real quick. Hey, Sammy, if you're watching. And Sam's very, very smart and has a real way with words. And so I'll do my best. Luckily, he wrote it down for me and didn't ask me to freestyle it like I kind of did with mine. So I'll probably get through it all right. But this is what Sam wanted to say about Joe. I think the reason animals, especially my old cats Sophia and Logan, who were a huge part of Sam's life for those who know, and animals and also children, liked Joe so much because they could sense he was at peace. He was one of the most peaceful people I have ever met. He was content with life and seemed to have want for nothing. The world is so complicated and full of ambition and chasing things we don't catch. There was something special about someone who has everything they need. He was almost monk-like in that way. He was one of the more enlightened people I've ever met. He had those attributes and was still funny and knew how to enjoy himself. He was humble and never self-righteous and effortless in the way he moved through the world. He was a good soul, and the world really lost something special when he passed. I hope we can all remember to be happy with what we have and keep a bit of that serenity with us to honor Joe's memory and to make this crazy world a little more simple. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It means the world to see all of you. And I think my mom would like to say something, and then of course it'll be open for whoever would like to come up and share anything about Joe.
It's the bear.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Patty Dickinson. The proud mother of Garrett Dickinson. Words fall short at a time like this, but I so wanted to honor Joseph Wagner Somogyi. I don't like talking in front of people, but God has a different plan for me. I felt very moved to speak. So I did a modified fast this week. I'm hypoglycemic, and I prayed because I wanted to hear from God, since I didn't know Joe very well. I had the honor of meeting Joe and Erin's parents several years ago when they came out to visit their sons. Very kind and generous people. Got to visit a little bit with Joe's mother, Linda. She didn't share much, but from one mother's heart to another, I know she really missed her sons. At that moment, my heart went out for those young men. I didn't see them much, but the motherly connection was very strong for me. So I wanted to do something special today, even though I didn't know Joe very well. So this is straight from the throne room of heaven. God gave me an acrostic, which is when you take a word, some of you may already know, and use the letters for a poem or something else. I use them for an attribute of Joe. And since I didn't know Joe very well, I needed to hear from God. So I used Joe's last name, Somogyi,
a Hungarian name. I remember being very fascinated by that name when I met you. And I asked Joe Sr., what ethnic origin is that? And he says, Hungarian. And I thought, oh, that is just so cool. So, Somogyi, S, steadfast. I looked the word up, and it means firmly fixed in place, immovable, firm in belief and determination. Some synonyms, you know what I'm trying to say. Constant, faithful, loyal, resolute. I love the word resolute because it means admirably purposeful. That was Joe. O, outward. As in appearance, Joe was outwardly quiet and reserved, but don't let that fool you. There was wisdom inside of him. When he spoke, people listened. That was Joe. M, meek. M-E-E-K. This isn't what you might think. Meekness is highly valued in God's kingdom. The biblical definition is having or showing a quiet and humble nature. Jesus declares in Matthew 5:5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." What does this mean? Those who forego worldly power will be rewarded in the kingdom of heaven. That was Joe. Oh, an ordinary Joe? No way. Pun intended. In my life experiences, I've learned that what appears to be ordinary people can really surprise us. With Joe, you just had to get through that front door. That was Joe. G, gentle, as in gentle spirit. There's a lot to be said for a gentle spirit. It's not a sign of weakness, but actually a gift. It creates an atmosphere of comfort and safety for those around him. That was Joe. Why? Yearning. This isn't so much an attribute as a verb. No more yearning for peace, comfort, or joy. We all yearn for that at times, right? He's totally bathing in it now. That's for Joe. I, integrity. The meaning is having the quality of being honest and having moral principles. Joe's father is a man of integrity. And sometimes these qualities get passed down the generational line, as I believe it did for Joe and Aaron as well. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, will not depart from it." Your sons may have departed from Racine, Wisconsin, but they didn't depart from the integrity instilled in them and that they observed growing up. Good job, Joe and Linda. Integrity. That was Joe. On Wednesday, I was looking on Facebook and this saying popped up in my feed that I feel like I'm supposed to share today. Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness nor a lack of faith. It is the price of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty and Garrett and Sam. So now we'd love to have any of you who would be willing to share a bit about Joe, what he meant to you, or, you know, a word to describe him, or a funny story, or a heartfelt story, just a minute or two. So if any of you would like to come up, stand here and share with us, that would be a beautiful thing. And if any of you are sort of stuck in the middle of one of those rows, we have a microphone that I could bring you. So whatever is your pleasure. So we'd love that.
So I met Joe. I was looking for people to add to my hockey team. And for those of you that don't know how that kind of works here in Durango, there's this thing called the Team Finder. And you go on there and you just have a name, you have a position, you have a phone number. I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm totally screened everybody for what are the Wisconsin area codes. So I called Joe, and I'm not good at hockey. My team isn't really good at hockey. We're a beginner team, and I only had one question that I asked everybody. I'm like, "Are you amped to play hockey?" And Joe, even though he's so reserved, he's like, yeah, we're gonna play some hockey. And so Joe was on, I think, the season 2 of our team, and he was always the first to sign up at almost every game, there to the end of the night in the parking lot. He played with tenacity. He was always at the net, ready for that rebound. And every season he would score at least a couple times, even though we were terrible. Aaron saw it. We're slowly getting better, but Joe, he just had that tenacity and that drive to constantly improve and constantly try to win the game for us. And even when we didn't, we would be hanging out in the parking lot just telling stories and talking about just whatever until the wee hours of the morning. Joe was fantastic. We will all miss him.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I just don't have much to say, but I do want to say a few things about Joe. I've known him probably, I don't know, close to 20 years since I knew Aaron back when he was 18 years old or something. And just always respected Joe and really enjoyed his company. I think I appreciated his really quiet demeanor, and he was a real observant person, and I liked how he kind of would sit and think about stuff, and really, like people have mentioned, it only took him a couple sentences to kind of analyze and put something good into the conversation. And I think I kind of related with him because of that. He's got a similar personality to me in that he doesn't really want to be the center of attention or be on the forefront. But I had some good times with Joe. I used to shovel snow with him, with Chad White and his crew, and we'd hang out on the roof. And Joe would usually be hanging out with Aaron and folks. We'd be talking about climbing and this and that. And it was Joe and me and this fella from Michigan, whose name I can't remember at this point, but they were really into anime and different stuff that I didn't really know about. So I was kind of that guy that like sat back and listened to them and tried to figure out what they were talking about. But yeah, he's just a good, genuine person. I'll miss him. He'd always bring like whiskey over if we had a little get together, and he never had to do that, but he was always super generous, and be missed.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful and so meaningful.
My name's Hillary. My husband's Aaron. Joe is our employee at Forescapes. He was an amazing worker. He showed up every day on time, early actually. We could always depend on him. He was a hard worker. Sorry. It's an incredible loss for us to lose him. I want to say one thing though. This picture here on the back that they put on is my daughter, our daughter. We have 2 kids and they have always been drawn to Joe. Like Sam said, kids and animals were drawn to him. My daughter was born during the pandemic, the shutdown. She wouldn't let anybody but me hold her. And she just walked right up to him and sat in his lap. And it touched me so much. And my son loved him so much. And our dogs, when they come to the property after working, they would go greet Joe first. They would meet him before Aaron. And he was an amazing human being. And just wanted to share that. He will be missed. He was an amazing person. So, thank you.
I'm Robert. I didn't know Joe really well. I know Aaron extremely well. Aaron and I hang out a whole lot. And, I'd been to Joe's house several times with Aaron, or, met at the bar and had a drink or something like that. And, it just goes to attest to Joe didn't talk a lot. He was quiet and reserved. And I immediately respected that about him because, Aaron and I are very similar in that regard too. We're not the outward personality types, and I've really had to struggle to, become more outward in my career and that kind of stuff. So, I immediately knew Joe was a good person, and like I said, I know Aaron extremely well, and Aaron's such a good person. Joe absolutely had to be, and Joe didn't hesitate to offer me his chicken and a beer and, anything he had, welcome me in his house, and, never felt any discomfort of any kind whatsoever, and all you had to do is meet Joe one time and know that you were welcome, and he was, solid and faithful and, respectful and just, the best person that you could hope for. So, thanks.
That's just beautiful. Wonderful.
My name's Eric. I met Joe working for Genesis with a bunch of people that are here today. And when I met Joe, I was in my early 20s. We were young. We were trying to figure out who we wanted to be and how to be in the world. And we all bonded through doing really hard work and really good work together. And one of the things that I'll always remember about Joe and appreciate about Joe was that, we were all confused as to what the next step was in life. At least I was personally, and I had a lot of insecurities at that time. And Joe was someone who you could always talk to, and you could always just completely be yourself around him. There was never any judgment with Joe. He made you feel comfortable, and he really just lessened the insecurities that I had when I was around him. He'll be missed. He was a very deliberate person. Joe knew exactly who he was, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do every day when he woke up, and he did it with a smile on his face. And I'll always appreciate Joe for that. I think we could all do well to be a little bit more like him in that regard.
Thank you so much. I don't want to be too forceful or anything, but
I've got this. Who would like to speak from their seat?
Remember the old Phil Donahue show where he described to the audience? Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Stacy. Joe and I dated for a little over 5 years in our 20s. I had a lot of really great times with just the two of us and with our groups of friends. You know, a lot that I'm seeing tonight. He taught me a lot of different things. I was pretty wild in my 20s. I feel like he balanced that really well. He taught me about anime and video games that I thought were actually like very stupid. But when he explained them to me, I got it. And I got to see some really amazing art because of him through the anime. And when I asked why do you like video games so much, he said, well, I get to be a part of the story. I get to control it. And that gave me a different perspective on that. And I definitely respected just all of it a whole lot more. I got to be a part of the Somogyi family for that amount of time, and I'm so thankful and happy for that forever. I really love you guys, and I miss you, and I will miss Joe. And I just have a lot of good memories with him. He was an awesome person.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
Anybody else?
I'm Adam. I as well worked alongside Joe. And Joe, you know, is everything everyone's been saying. Super generous. I mean, I can't recall how many times he got us all to the job site in his car, piled in his little sedan. And no griping. Even when I'm on his couch at 5th and 5th after a night of partying the next day, often. And in work, he taught me a ton about landscaping, and never for a minute did he make me feel like he didn't have time to show me the right way to do something. And so I appreciate Joe for all his help.
Thank you so much to all of you. It makes him so present, so visible.
Sorry, everybody, I'm back. I was thinking, if it's all right, I was going to share the firework one-liner story, but I don't want to take anybody's thunder because it's a good story. So if that's okay. I just want to share like one of Joe's wit, and I think that exemplifies not only his sense of humor and enjoyment of life, but also his intelligence. Because you can't come up with good jokes like that right in the moment without being really smart. And Joe is very smart. So we had all been partying downtown, as Adam said. That was pretty much the regular we used to do back in the day when we were in our 20s, being pretty wild. And Joe was the voice of reason, of course. But we were walking home, and it was myself, Sam, Kyle, Stacy, and Joe. And we had, at that time, we also do around a lot of fireworks. Not during, fire restriction or anything like that. We were pretty safe about it, but nonetheless, it was a big part of our rowdiness. And we had pockets full of black cats or whatever that we've been tossing at each other or whatever all night. And we were walking back home up in this neighborhood, actually, on the east side. And Sam and I were up ahead of the three of them, and we turned around, we tossed some black cats at them and ducked into the bushes or whatever. And right when the fireworks went off, right next to him, a police officer rides his patrol car out of the alley, like right next to him. Turns his lights on, gets out, starts shaking them down about the fireworks, and they're trying to explain it wasn't us, and they were being honest because it wasn't them. It was Sam and I, who were about 50 feet away watching from the bushes with our brains racing, how do we make this right? And luckily we had one more firework left. It was a very large firework. And we decided that we were going to, show the cop that he had more important matters to attend to than talking to Joe and Stacy and Kyle. So we lit this thing off in the middle of the intersection, not too far from him, actually. And if I'm remembering right, and I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but the firework went off, and the cop obviously looks over and sees this. And again, it was a large firework, so very loud as well. And Joe, being classic Joe, says something along the lines of, "Well, I guess that's our alibi, officer." So yeah, that I just want to share one example of that humor, just right in the moment. So funny, calm, cool, collected, humorous. Sam and I ran into the woods. We didn't get caught, if you're wondering. But yeah, I'll miss that wit for sure, and try and honor it with good one-liners. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Garrett. Well, I think we have a few minutes if anybody else wants to relay a similar tale of misbehavior. Does anybody want to say anything? I know your heart's so full. And, yeah. I can turn that off now. I noticed that there are some kids here. Thank you, kids. I just want to say thanks for being here. I'm sure that Joe would really appreciate you being here. I was thinking that I read a little story about how when somebody dies, you can think of it as a ship sailing away farther and farther, and gets to a point where you don't see that ship anymore, but it's still there. It's out there sailing away and to another shore, another beach. And someday we'll get to go over to that beach and see what's been going on in that ship. And I love that image. And maybe we can think of, that's one way we can think about Joe. So let's see, before we close, I just wanted to mention a few things. So everyone's invited to a fun reception over at Rhonda Filliger's home. I think Zia is catering, right? Yum. So you're all welcome. She lives at, 2119 East Lawn, the corner of Crest View and East Lawn. So would love it if you came. And it would be just another time to, find refuge in each other and be together in this time and do some more remembering. One other thing is Joe invites any of you to take a flower, pull out a flower and take it with you, especially if you can't come to the reception. Let's see, what else? We are going to, at the conclusion, Danielle from Hood is going to open the casket again, and if any of you want to pay some final respects, please do. So let's see. Closing thought, I'd like to leave us with a lovely reassurance from the theologian Henry Nouwen. He wrote, "Let's not be afraid of death. There is no cruel boss, vengeful enemy, or cruel tyrant wanting to destroy us. Only a loving, always forgiving God, eager to welcome us home. Don't ever forget that. It's all good." So let's close with a prayer. God, help us never forget that this love is always the final forgiving word. We commend Joe to your loving, healing, and eternal care. And in the fullness of time, may we also be welcomed there, as you have welcomed Joe. Amen. Many blessings on all of you. And we'll see you at Rhonda's house.